Hi guys, Tip here. So today we are reading Ranger's Apprentice, Chapter 4 by John Flanagan. Okay, let's start. Well, who? Martin asked in expiration, flicking through the sheets of paper with the candidates detailed written on them. He had only been the Baron's secretary for 5 years and knew nothing of Will's history. He realized now that there was no full family name on the boy's papers, and assumed he had let this mistake slip past. He was annoyed at himself. "What's your family name, boy?" he asked stubbornly. Will looked at him, hating this moment. "I don't have," he began, but merciful Brandon conceded. "Will is a special case, Martin," he said quietly. He looked telling the secretary the matter to let this matter go. He turned back to Will, smiling encouragement. What school do you wish to apply for, Will?" he asked. "Bow school, please, my lord," Will replied, trying to sound confident in his choice. Brandon allowed a frown to crease on his forehead, and Will felt his hopes sinking. "Bow school, Will? You don't think you're a little too small? On the small side?" The Brandon asked gently. Will bit his lip. He had all but convinced himself that he wanted this badly enough. If he had believed in himself strongly enough, he would be accepted in spite of his obvious shortcomings. "I haven't had my growth spurt yet, sir," he said desperately. "Everybody says that." Brandon, Brandon rubbed his bearded chin with thumb and forefinger. As he considered the boy before him, he glanced to his battlemaster. "Rodney?" he asked. The tall knight stepped forward, studying Will for the moment or two, then slowly shook his head. "I'm afraid he's too small, my lord," he said. Will felt a cold hand clutching his heart. "I'm stronger than I look, sir," he said, but the battlemaster was unswayed by the plea. He glanced at Brandon, obviously not enjoying the situation, and shook his head. "Any second choice, Will?" the Brandon asked, his voice gentle, even concerned. Will hesitated for a long moment. He had never considered any other selections. "Horse school, sir?" he asked finally. "Horse school trained and cared for the mighty battle horses that the castle knights rode." It was at least a link to the battle school, Will thought. But Ulf, the horse master, was shaking his head already, even before the Brandon asked his opinion. "I need apprentices, my lord," he said, "but this one's too small. He'll never control one of my battle horses. They'll stomp him into the ground as soon as they look at him." Will could only see Brandon through a watery blur now. He fought desperately to keep the tears from sliding down his cheeks. That would be the ultimate humiliation, to be rejected from battle school and then break down and cry like a baby in front of the Brandon. All the craft masters and his ward mates. "What skills do you have, Will?" the Brandon asked him. Will racked his brain. He wasn't good at lessons in languages as Alice was. He couldn't form neat, perfect letters the way George did, nor did he have Jenny's interest in cooking. And he certainly didn't have Horace's muscle and strength. "I'm a good climber, sir," he said finally. Seeing that the Brandon was waiting for him to say something, it was a mistake. He realized instantly. Chubb the cook glared at him angrily. He can climb, all right. I remember when he climbed up the drain pipe into my kitchen and stole a tray of sweet cakes that were cooling on the window sill." Will's jaw dropped with the unfairness of it all. That had been 2 years ago. He was a child then, and it was a mere childish prank, he wanted to say, but now the scribe master was talking too. "And just this last spring he climbed to our third floor study and turned two rabbits loose during one of our legal debates. Most deprived, absolutely." "Rabbits, you say, scribe master," said the Brandon, and Nigel nodded instantly. "A male and a female rabbit, my lord, if you take my meaning," he replied. "Most disturbous indeed." Unseen by Will, the very serious Lady Pullen put one elegant hand in front of her mouth. She might have been concealing the yawn. But when she removed her hand, the corners of her mouth was slightly up tilted still. Well, yes, said the Brandon. We all know how rabbits are. And, as I said, my lord, it was spring, Nagel went on. In the case the Brandon had missed his point. Lady Pulling gave a vent to an unladylike cough. The Brandon looked in her direction in some surprise. I think we get the picture, Scribe Master, he said, then returned his gaze to the desperate figure who stood in front of him. Will kept his chin up and stared slightly ahead. Brandon felt for the young lad in that moment. He could see the tears welling up in those lively brown eyes, held back only by the infinite determination, willpower. He thought abstractedly, recognizing the play of the boy's name. He didn't enjoy putting the boy through all this, but it had to be done. He sighed inwardly. Is there anyone who could use this boy? He said, desperately to himself. Will allowed his head to turn and gaze pleadingly at the line of craftmasters, praying that one of them would relent and accept him. One by one, silently, they shook their heads. Surprisingly, it was the ranger who broke the awful scene in the room. There is something you should know about this boy, my lord, he said. Will had never heard Holt speak before. His voice was deep and soft-spoken, with a slight burr of Hinburnian accent to it, still noticeable. He stepped forward now and handed the Brandon a sheet of paper, folded double, and Aldrin unfolded it, studied the words written there, and frowned. You sure of this, Holt? He said. Indeed, my lord. The Brandon carefully refolded the paper and placed it on his desk. He drummed his fingers thoughtfully on the desktop, then said, I'll have to think on this overnight. Holt nodded and stepped back, seeming to fade into the background as he did so. Will stared anxiously at him, wondering what information the mysterious figure had passed on to the Brandon. Like most people, Will had grown up believing that rangers were people who were best avoided. They were secretive, acrine group, shrouded in the mystery and uncertainty, and that uncertainty led to fear. Will didn't like the thought that Holt knew something about him, something that he felt was important enough to bring to the Brandon's attention today, of all days. The sheet of paper lay there, tauntingly close, yet impossibly far away. He realized that there was movement around him, and the Brandon was speaking to the other people in the room. Congratulations to those who were selected here today. It's a big day for all of you, so you're free to have the rest of the day off and enjoy yourselves. The kitchen will provide a banquet for you in your quarters, and for the rest of the day you have a free run of the castle and village. Tomorrow you'll report to your new craftmasters first thing in the morning, and it will take a tip from me. And if you'll take a tip from me, you'll make sure you're on time. He smiled at the other four. They addressed Will with a hint of sympathy in his voice. Well, I'll let you know tomorrow what I've decided about you. He turned to Martin and gestured for him to show the new apprentices out. Thank you, everyone, he said, and left the room, through the door behind his desk. The craftmasters followed his lead, then Martin ushered the former wards to the door. They chattered together silently, relieved and delighted that they had been selected by the craftmasters of their choice. Will hung back behind the others, hesitating as he passed the desk where the sheet of paper lay. He stared at it for a moment as if somehow he could see through to the words written on the reverse side. Then he felt that same sensation he had felt earlier, that someone was watching him. He looked up and found himself staring into the dark eyes of the ranger, who remained behind the Brandon's high black chair, almost invisible in the strange cloak of his. Will shuddered in a sudden frenzy of fear and hurried out of the room. Well, guys, that is the end of the chapter. Thus, the end of the video. Like and subscribe if you want more, and bye, guys. Dip out.